UCSD Visual Arts Speaker Series. I'm Grant Kester, Professor of Art History, and for our lecture today, I'm delighted to introduce Saba Zavarei. Saba is an Iranian artist, researcher, writer, and associate lecturer at Goldsmiths College in London. Her main interests concern the body and everyday performance, the politics of space, the urban condition, and contemporary art, especially as these relate to gender studies and Iran. Saba is guided by the fundamental idea of research as practice and enjoys working in the areas of multimedia. She received her BA from the University of Tehran, her MFA from the Chelsea College of Art and Design, and her PhD from Goldsmiths College, University of London. Her doctoral dissertation, Bodies Out of Place, Performance, Space, and Gender in Contemporary Iran, will be published by Cambridge University Press in 2024. Congratulations, Saba, on that achievement. Saba is the co-founder of the journal Konesh, that's a Farsi term for act or activism, an artist-led research lab and publication on critical and creative spatial practice. In 2018, she created Radio Hivan, which is a street radio. She'll probably reference that and explain it to us. An online platform and podcast dedicated to women in Iran reclaiming public spaces through feminist interventions of singing and other transgressive acts in public space, which is a project which began with her own singing performance in the Sheikh Lutfullah Mosque in Isfahan in 2014. Saba also edited a special issue of Field Journal in spring 2022 titled Dancing into Alternative Realities, which focuses on engaged art practice in Iran. Welcome, Saba. It is a pleasure to have you join us today. And just to give everybody a sense of the format, Saba will present her lecture, and then we'll have time for questions and answers afterwards, which you can put into the YouTube chat. So thank you again for joining us from London, Saba. It's a delight to have you here.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Professor Kester, for inviting me to have this opportunity for this lecture. And hello, everyone. Okay, so. So today I'll be talking about the transformative power of performance in challenging and changing the meanings of our everyday spaces. I'll be asking how site-specific and out-of-place performance can contribute to creating alternative spaces. My presentation will be mainly focusing on feminist interventions and transgressive performances of everyday life in the past decade in Iran. I'll be showing you my own practice as an artist and performance maker, but also several examples by artists and non-artists challenging the normative geography of contemporary Iran. I'll start by looking at individual acts. So it's going to have three sections, and I'm going to start by looking at individual acts, and then the attempts for bringing these together in reclaiming spaces. And then I'll move on to the recent events and try to explain how the enormous events of women life freedom, a feminist and progressive movement that shook Iran and beyond, with its myriad artistic ways to reimagine urban life, has radically changed everyday performances in Iran. Over the past decade, my practice research has focused on examining the relationship between gender and space through the lens of performance studies. Although my investigation began with a very personal question and curiosity of how I performed, how was I always out of place, soon I found it tied to a complicated network of social and political issues that were causing this feeling of exclusion or feeling of this alienation in public spaces. in one of my very first artistic interventions, that's the project that you're seeing now, exactly a decade ago. And I was thinking that's really fascinating. This is like exactly a decade that I've been looking at this, phenomena in Iran. One day I took my bedding to the streets of Tehran. I had a mixed relationship with these places. On one hand, it was my home, so it was extremely familiar, and I had so many joyful memories of these places. But also, on the other hand, in these very places, I had been detained by the morality police for not, having like a proper compulsory hijab, or not having covered my feet properly on my ankles, long trousers up to my ankles. I had been catcalled many, many times with the most disturbing language on daily basis. And I had been chased by the riot police when I was on the streets during the Green Movement protests. So my body was filled with anxiety and fear on so many levels. I had very much this discomfort with the spaces that I had to call home. My plan was simple: to fall asleep in different corners of Tehran and create intimacy with the city. So I called it Sleeping with Tehran. And here, the passers-by witness an unusual scene. So a clean, crisp duvet and pillow, shoes neatly paired next to them, and the young woman sleep. The picture doesn't belong to this place. It's a rather private scene that I'm bringing it to the public space. And one possible question is, why is it strange to see a woman lying down here? So to give you a little bit of context to understand why this might be strange, I have to explain that it's completely normal to see a man in a similar position to occupy public spaces in so many different ways, including lying down and sleeping in public spaces. And also, on the other hand, the very natural image of something very as simple and as mundane as just lying down has been completely removed from all formal representations of female body in public spaces in Iran. So even if you watch a film, if you watch television or in advertisements, if there is a woman who is like sleeping, she's always covered, she's always like extremely uncomfortable in her body and very apologetic for occupying the space in certain positions. So the high level of policing over spaces, the ideologies, another means by which female bodies in Iran are controlled and suppressed, such as compulsory hijab, ban on singing, dancing in public spaces, obstacles for them to ride bikes or motorcycles. There's so many aspects that I might come across some of them in this presentation. Attempt to make women feel fearful and apologetic, as I said, to take up the space, to occupy the space. And the hegemonic order embedded in space forces bodies to perform in certain ways and obliges them to become gendered. So as feminist sociologist Naomi Paul explains in Space Invaders, first, over time, specific bodies are associated with specific spaces. So she explains how this belonging or association between bodies and spaces is taking place. And then, secondly, spaces become marked as territories belonging to particular bodies. So through my site-specific acts, I was challenging this association between bodies and spaces that was encouraged and also reinforced in different ways. So I was then a space invader. Throughout these years that I've been studying site-specific performance and transgression in Iran, I've come across countless videos and photos of other women's transgressive acts in everyday spaces. And borrowing from geographer Tim Cresswell, transgression is very much a spatial concept. So he explains that transgression is crossing a line. So if we think of it spatially, it means that certain acts belong to certain spaces, and if you move that act to across that red line, you're transgressing. In the past decade that I've been focusing on this topic, I have come across other artists who've taken their practice into where it's banned the street. So this is one of the examples. I got to know Mitra, who is a photographer based in Tehran, and we started having conversation, and she sent me these photos that I'll explain that she can never actually show them inside Iran. That it's a dancer that she's doing ballet moves, and she started taking photos of her in Ekbatan, the neighborhood in which I grew up and lived all my life in Iran. And I was really astonished and filled with joy because I just felt like I'm being told some secrets about these places that I dearly love, some hidden layers of these places that I've spent most of my life there, but I didn't know this thing is possible, or this scene took place there. And in this project, the dancer wears a ballet costume. So you can see in this one, for example. And this is like exceptionally brave of her, because especially the top one, because as I said, there are certain rules and restrictions for women's outfits, and women can be punished with detention and flogging for not observing them. And as a site of her performance, she told me that she chose Ekbatan and Yusufabad. So it was really interesting why she chose certain places, because she thought that they're they had relatively open cultural atmosphere. So that came up in so many of the interviews that I've done in this field, that place plays such a big role in their practice. They choose very carefully where to do what. And Mitra told me, as you can see on the screen, that people were not making a fuss about what we were doing, but they didn't really lessen that didn't really lessen our anxiety and fear of transgressing the norms. We didn't have any bad experience with the passers-by, but of course it's different from one neighborhood to another, as I just explained. And then she says, I wanted the female body. Sorry, this is a nice sentence. I don't want to miss it out. So dance is like fresh air in the city. What has been forbidden all of a sudden sprouts right in the middle of the urban space. I wanted the female body, which is always doomed to specific limited postures, to take up the space in new ways, and I captured it with my camera in unprecedented ways. And she told me that I wasn't surprised to hear that she can't exhibit her work inside Iran, and within the current political atmosphere. And for anyone familiar with those places, her photographs are offering an imaginative and a new vision to these places. So they're actually intervening into what they are and offering you a layer of hope, maybe a layer of future. That she's kind of creating this future in present. My search for art that blends with everyday and is very blaring, these two boundaries, the boundary between art and everyday, led me to know the work of Tanin Torabi, a professional dance artist who's known internationally, but very, very much less known in Iran. And that's again because she feels that if she's showing her work inside Iran, first of all, there's not a platform who would offer her that opportunity, but also it might endanger her. Whereas if she's engaging with the public outside Iran, that's relatively easier for her. So in her film Derive, that was made in 2017, which lasts for 7 minutes, we see her in Tajrish Bazaar. So Tajrish is a very crowded area in Tehran, and at a very busy hour. And as she positions her body in front of a camera, she moves away. So while the camera, I can't, for copyright issues, I'm not allowed to show the video, so I'm trying to describe it for you. So as we look at her, the camera follows her and she moves away. And she told me that I took the movements movement motifs from the everyday. So in Deriv, I took shoving as my main motive. Like when you are walking in a bazaar and someone shoves you, and you have to quickly move to stop yourself from stumbling. I chose that location because it was very narrow and no one would have enough time or space to see what was happening properly. And since my motives were all bits of everyday moves, no one could question me for doing something out of place. So this is, I find, a super clever way of creating a site-specific kind of transgressive performance, but also using the features of the site, like the narrow space, and also choosing the right motives, the moves, that very much blends in with the everyday. So the camera follows her, and in this way, the in-situ audience is constantly replaced by new members. So there's a very little chance that someone can get a coherent understanding of what she's doing, of her move in time, and it's only the camera that can capture that following her. Rancière defines aesthetics as the distribution of the sensible, an order of things that is normalized by hegemonic power. The system of self-evident facts of sense perception that simultaneously discloses the existence of something in common and the delimitation that define the respective parts and positions within it. So he writes that artistic practices are ways of doing and making that intervene in the general distribution of ways of doing and making, as well as in the relationships that maintain to modes of being and forms of visibility. So the disobedient body that I'm studying here in these performances interrupts this hegemonic spatial aesthetics, and it opens up to new meanings and interpretations. So it challenges what is dictated or perceived as normal, and exposes the discrimination and oppression that are embedded in the aesthetic protocols of the state. The insubordinate dancer here disrupts the hegemonic order, and the documents of these performances, scattered on the internet or hidden away on personal hard drives, configure an alternative aesthetics that defies tyranny and embraces the possibility of a kind of emancipation. If the very high level of scrutiny, surveillance, and oppression removes any chance for the civil society to organize themselves, and to create change, could protest art, and in particular transgressive performance, provide an opportunity for joining forces? So here I want to look into that. Could bodies out of place shape a collective? In this part of my talk, I'll have a look at a few examples where performance is joining bodies. So it is the power of performance, the body, that is joining other bodies in their quest for freedom and equality. You might have seen this picture. I don't know. It's quite famous for all Iranians. So in December 2017, a young woman stood on a utility box in a crowded Engelab Street, meaning Revolution Street, ironically. And she tied her hijab, like a white headscarf, to a stick, waving it slowly to the crowd, staying silent. Vida Mowahed, later known as the daughter of Revolution Street or Engelab Street, was arrested on the same day. In an article that I wrote at that time, The Plinth and the Performer, I wrote that standing on the plinth, this body has singled out the everyday disobedience. I want to focus on this a little, because when we get to woman life freedom, I really want to emphasize on how this didn't just come out of nowhere. There is like this long history of protest and using public spaces, public furniture to protest and to create, transgressive performances. So standing on the plinth, this body has singled out the everyday disobedience. It's celebrating another kind of life rather than hiding it from the watchers. Like a professional performer, she is there to act, and the plinth gives her authority. She turns the public space to her own stage, not for wanting or asking for her rights, but rather to perform it, for performing it. She performs the change, the alternative, the dream, and the society of spectacles on the other side of the abyss, far away from the plinth, remains speechless. So in the days to follow, tens of, hundreds of girls and women, and even men in some occasions, joined in, and they just started doing the same thing. So they would just find different objects or furnitures in the urban space that they could climb and create a plinth for themselves to perform. And they created one of the most spectacular protest movements in contemporary Iran, which is really, really incredible because there was no political manifestation. There was no civil organization coordinating any of these moves. It was through the figure that they proliferated and found each other. It was the performance that joined them and created an astonishing collective that was otherwise scattered and hidden away in the quotidian. In lack of organization behind this movement, so the regime couldn't find, a single person or a group of people to oppress. So they were quite confused, I think, and they started punishing the urban furniture for creating this opportunity. So as you can see on the left images, they started creating sloped surfaces on the utility boxes, and then the third image in the middle shows you one of the Farhad Meysami, one of our very famous activists. Overnight, he decided to create this counter slope thing, and he just went there and he put it on that. I just really find it fascinating how a simple utility box, an object in the urban space became this contested site, and different people were trying to reclaim it, different groups. Exactly a decade ago, in a famous mosque in Isfahan, I decided to sing and film myself. No one was there at that moment, and it only took me 37, I think, seconds. I then posted it on social media, and I received so many reactions. That, and what I'm going to explain later, inspired me to create a collective platform. Some of the messages that I received, most of them were supportive and encouraging, but also received threatening messages. And I just need to again repeat that, although never passed as a law, singing solo is forbidden for women and has been banned since 1979 revolution. And in so many occasions, women have been arrested, detained, persecuted, sentenced to prison, and also pushed out of stage just for performing in front of a mixed gender audience. جهان هیچ اگر دوست دارم تو راه کفر بوم دوست دارم تو ای شور بوم غمی پر از خون دل و مهربان چهر تو ای دخت شرمگین امید تو را دوست دارم اگر دوست تو را دوست دارم اگر دوست دارم. 2 years later, I went back to the same mosque, and I sang again there. I don't know how clear it was in the very last few seconds, but a soldier who was like on guard in that mosque, he came to me and he was like, "I'm sorry, you can't really sing here." But his body language, the way he was telling me, it was like, I don't really believe in stopping you from singing, but sorry, I've been told to do this. And what I found really fascinating is that between first and second time, well, the first time there was no one there, but the second time people were there. You saw in the video, and to a lot of people, this was not super, highly transgressive. Not many people reacted or even noticed that I was doing this. So as a reaction to these videos, I began to receive many messages from women who shared their own photos and videos of their transgressive acts. And it was exactly these individual performative tactics that I could identify in these documents that inspired me to create a collective platform. And Radio Khiyaban, or Radio Street, was born, a participatory podcast and socially engaged art project that was focusing on feminist intervention into public spaces of Iran, especially through singing. And during 12 episodes podcast production, I collaborated with more than 50 women, and most of them sharing their experiences of their site-specific, transgressions. Through analyzing these interviews, I realized that in the temporal absence of the hegemonic power scrutinizing bodies and performances, the social meaning of space is produced in alternative ways through disruptive feminist performance actions. Another platform, a collective that I want to talk about, is called Haras Watch. In 2019, a group of feminist activists led by Goncha Qawwami started a platform that aimed at fighting sexual harassment against women in public spaces of Iran. I understand that this is not necessarily, they don't claim to be artists, but I find the tactics they use in activating the citizens, activating citizens and participants to go and actually intervene into their local spaces. I find that very much in line with what I've been studying. So I thought I also show you this example in this presentation. They created brochures and leaflets that were accessible through their website. So they put everything there for people to download. And in no time, girls and women started downloading these files, printing them, creating their own posters, and taking them to their own places and starting conversations and even an educational process with their local communities. So rather than disseminating their educational material online, they created a way for the participants to be encouraged to intervene into the social fabric. Another creative initiatives by them that I find really fascinating is that they created a map on which everyone can register their experience of assault or harassment. And so not only they made an extremely invisible matter visible, but also they are showing us the spatiality of it. They're giving us this map that is showing us very different information than any other map that we've seen from Iran. It's highlighting how women are subject to harassment and assault in different places. So in September 2022, this is the last part of my talk. Mahsa Jina Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish girl, was killed in police custody for not allegedly wearing compulsory hijab properly. So in the months to follow, Iran was shaken with cries of for freedom and justice, and woman life freedom was born. The Islamic Republic's brutal crackdown on the biggest anti-regime protests since its establishment has so far resulted in more than 500 deaths, including at least 70 children. With women at the forefront, women at the heart of it, woman life freedom has become a feminist movement that has already arguably revolutionized the Iranian society in so many ways. It's impossible to cover all the artistic and performative acts that have emerged during this time. And it's enormous, But I've just chosen a few to show you and to show the role of body and the importance of embodied practice at the heart of this movement. In the past 4 decades, as I've mentioned before, women in Iran have been subject to harshest scrutiny and policing of their hair and bodies by the Islamic Republic. The compulsory wearing of the hijab from childhood, enforced by the so-called morality police, abetted by endless harassment from officials and non-officials alike, has turned their hair into a battlefield. So when Mahsa Jina Amini was detained and killed for her hijab, fight over hair and body autonomy became the core of the protests. And thousands of photos and videos captured women setting their hijabs on fire, cutting their hair, and this just became the strong and the powerful symbol at the heart of this movement. They were protesting decades of state and religious control over their bodies. In Shiraz, in south of Iran, in an incredible feminist performance, a young artist sat in the middle of the street, simply brushing her hair. A very ordinary act in any other context, but here it exposed the absurdity of forced hijab and forced any kind of forced outfit on women, especially on their hair, and the police violence in attempting to keep their hair covered. But by performing the private in the public space, the artist created an alternative space. So she's creating this collage again that is showing us an alternative, another Iran. She's showing us that future that people are fighting for. She told me that because her hair was curly, when she was brushing it, it was actually like rebelling against her, and she kind of embraced that as part of the performance, because it became even more real that the hair was actually reflecting or reacting to what was she doing. So again, back to performing the ordinary and the normal life. In another very strong move, this is Donya Rad, and she's a set designer. She published her the picture on the left of herself dining in a restaurant without compulsory hijab, and just enjoying an ordinary day. These are during like the very the heat of the peak of the protests. And she's just enjoying an ordinary day in a restaurant. So she was detained, and a few days later, the picture on the right, someone published it on social media, her absence again. So as if things are going, things were back to this revolutionary act, this protest performance that she was doing. And what I really, really find fascinating here, and I find very powerful about this performance, is that she's not necessarily posing in any of these cliche, moves that we know as protests. She's just being very, very ordinary. And I think that the power of this performance is exactly in that she is performing that future. She is performing that hopeful alternative that people are fighting for at the very same time. Against the killing machines of the regime, protesters only had one thing: their bodies. This is another example of a very powerful performance. These are students at the Art University in Tehran. And in this performance, what they did, they're just sitting in a certain position next to each other to write these words. It reads Azadi on the left and blood on the right. Dressed in traditional Baluch clothes, she dances on the Azadi Tower. So this is Azadi Tower in Tehran that has become the symbol of freedom, because Azadi means freedom. And the man who was dancing in the video, he's Khodanur from Baluchistan, a thousand kilometers away. So these are two different locations. She wears a mask to cover her face, but no hijab to hide her hair. And she spins freely, but if you paid attention to the video, she's choreographed every single move to mimic Khodanur's dance. The Baluch dancer, Khodanur Lodji, the Baluch dancer and influencer, was killed on Bloody Friday on 30th of April 2022, one of at least 35 people left dead in the wake of violent crackdown on the peaceful protest in Zahedan. So that's in southeast of Iran. Before the nationwide protest, Khodanur had experienced torture. After his killing, photo evidence, a photo went viral that showed him with his hands and feet tied to a flagpole, and a glass of water in front of him, but out of his reach, to taunt him. This image inspired many across the world to commemorate him by reenacting this scene, expressing anger at the regime that tortured and killed him. His dance performances offer radically contrasting imagery to his tragic ending. The video of the Azadi Tower dancer is spliced together with those of Khodanur, as we saw. So making it clear she's mirroring his moves carefully, creating a sense of continuity. So Khodanur is killed, but this girl is alive in Tehran. She's like creating this bridge through her body, through her moves. She's linking the death and alive. The mourner here decides to embody the acts of the protester, and in this way, she lends her body to him. Khodanur is not dead. He continues to dance through her body, far away from Zahedan. Through the reenactment of his performance, Khodanur is remembered, not as dead, but someone whose passion for music and dance transcends his circumstances, while commemorating his life. The revolutionary mourner herself, a woman, is at the same time protesting the compulsory hijab and the state's ban on women's dance for more than 4 decades. Her body becomes the intersection where those marginalized are meeting, are joined. Her dance is a bridge between death and life, between the center and the margins, between strangers. And by doing this, she performs the alternative reality in which the oppressed, the subaltern, the subordinate, has the agency over the move over her body and her performance. I put these 3 photos next to each other because they've been, when they came out, they've been all super highly controversial. So the left one is me. I did this project, I called it The Politics of Bra. And what I did, this is 10 years ago again, I went to public spaces of Tehran and tried to find a shop that would sell women's underwear. So for some reason, not surprisingly, normally shops, the lingerie shops have curtains. They're like covered. You can't see inside. You can't see the objects from outside. I've heard that it has changed. So if it's changed a lot, I should update myself on that. And I went to the bazaar that they told me that you can find, women's underwear just openly there. And I bought something there and I just tried it on in different places. And I could see the reactions, how very, very controversial it was for the audience and how they were reacting. I even got some violent reactions. People didn't like me doing that. And this is even on top of, all the hijab and everything. So just the fact that this was kind of pointing to, I don't know, revealing something, instead of revealing gender or revealing sexuality, I don't know. It was really, really uncomfortable for people. The second and third image, the ones on the right, they emerged during the Woman Life protests. When I published the one on the right on my social media, I again received so many negative reactions. Also, also positive, but so many negative reactions. I don't know these girls. I haven't been in touch with them. I don't know their motives. I don't know anything. But I just found these images quite powerful in the sense that they want to reclaim, female body from religion, from the state. And I just found it extremely, extremely courageous for them to do that. But it was really interesting that still, I feel like, although the meaning of transgression has changed, still, the boundaries are still somewhere. And I found these 2 photos especially quite powerful in a sense that they're again showing us that, transgression exists, but these boundaries have moved. The body is at the core of woman life freedom, and the regime targeted bodies. Thousands were wounded, hundreds were killed, many lost their eyes, many got arrested. In response to the celebration of creativity and peaceful protest, the regime created a requiem of death and pain. After a year and a half, the morality police are back on the streets. And these days, unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of really horrific videos of them, harassing women for not wearing hijab or for, what they call it, bad hijab. And women are still fighting for their everyday basic rights. But some things have changed. That's why I wanted to put these 3 photos at the end of my presentation, that transgression, in the sense that we knew it, has become normal and the boundaries have shifted. So that performance, that out of place performance that we've seen, in so many bodies proliferating, creating collectives in some moments, scattered individually, that has actually changed the social meaning of spaces. And as the battle goes on, it's the agency that has won spaces by performing layers and layers of contested meanings, of alternative meanings to the place, alternative spaces of hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saba. I don't know if Paulo, if I'm on screen yet. There we are. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, Saba. I know we'll have some questions, and first, just thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Really, just so much to dig into with the work that you talk about. And I thought, if it's okay, I'll lead off with maybe a question of my own, and then we've got some in the chat as well. So I have so many things I wanted to talk to you about, but let me pick one. So there is at the root of a lot of this work, I suppose, is a concept of masculinity of some kind. And it's a masculinity that seems extremely fearful and frightened of something. And I wonder if you could talk a bit about what this model of, because, you know, the kind of global rise of these neo-authoritarian movements, you know, is quite alarming. And they're often developing in conjunction with forms of religious fundamentalism. And we see the same thing in the United States, frankly, a version of it. And so at the root of this is it seems like a notion of the male self that feels that it can only sustain itself by projecting shame onto women and trying to force them to be ashamed of their own bodies in some way. What do you think what's your understanding, I guess, of the concept of masculinity that's at the root of what's happening, let's say, in Iran and maybe more globally? If you have thoughts on that.
No, it's a very interesting question. I'm thinking when I look at it historically, it's been used as a tool to police and control spaces. So this was a short presentation. I really wish I had time to dig a little into, you know, where these beliefs come from and why public space is so important for, you know, why policing the public space in such a way, with so much violence, is so important for the regime. I think, I'm not sure if I'm answering exactly your question, but I think that masculinity is benefiting from ruling, you know, the public spaces. So by shaming women, by making them feel apologetic, by making them feeling scared, it's kind of removing them from public spaces. And by this, I think it gains two things. So one is that associating women with the household. So, you know, it knows that women are there to provide free childcare, to clean the houses, to you know, to maintain the household. And the other one is to actually keep in control and be in charge of the public spaces. So I feel like it has two sides, at least when it comes to the space or the spatial understanding of it.
Right. Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, there's a much longer history of patriarchal violence against women and maybe a fear of the generative power that women have, the kind of at multiple levels. So it's just so disturbing to see it becoming so common many places. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it has to maintain itself. It needs to create these arbitrary, these fake, you know, boundaries for women. So as soon as they cross this, it becomes such a scary thing for them. So why, for example, biking is such a big issue for them. It's really incredible when you think of women and mobility. If women have access to cheap and safe, means for mobility, well, can they then control them and say not to go there and not to go here? Can you control their movement? So in a sense, yeah, I feel like that fear that they're trying to create, it's very artificial, and all these things that they really have to like put everything into these fake things that they create, because once they are destroyed, once they are removed, there's nothing else there. There's nothing else. And I think that's what's happening in Iran, that bodies have gone beyond ideology. That's why to me, bringing back the morality police with so much violence on the street just shows the defeat. I think Islamic Republic is expressing its failure in controlling women internally, because they don't have that feeling of guilt or sin or fear anymore. They know what they're capable of. That's why I was emphasizing on these ordinary performances, because they are showing us that we can be, we are living a different life. And the fact that they've moved on from that ideology, that internalized fear, that they've invested so much in it. If I just start telling you, like, from school, kindergarten, the advertisements, state TV, state media, from any possible platform, they've tried to internalize this fear in us. And now you see women refusing, they've moved on from that. So I feel like they need these fake conceptions to keep something, in place, because once the belief is gone, bodies disobey, bodies rebel.
Right. It's the potential fear of the contagion, isn't it? Because that's why I thought, the examples of the that you gave, multiple examples where a single performance then it gets taken up, and I thought that was fascinating vis-a-vis this idea of a so-called spontaneous resistance, because it's linking people together in that act. In a way, you said there was no pre-existing civic structure of resistance. Resistance itself came into existence through that act being replicated. So it's just fascinating. I don't want to take up all our time. I could have a much longer conversation with you about this, but there's a bunch of questions in the chat. So let me switch over. Let's see. Jay's one of our practice PhDs. Thank you for your presentation. Let's see. I have two questions, Jay. Okay. Thank you for presentation. It's intriguing that you call your bedding actions, that's the sleeping in Tehran, in 2014, performance intervention and not performance. How would the former be different for you from the latter? Do you call your works performance or performance photography when they are made for institutional presentations?
And why did I call it? I'm just trying to understand the question. Why did I call one performance intervention, the other one performance photography, the one?
I think he's asking the sleeping in Tehran piece. You called it a performance intervention rather than a performance. Maybe you could respond to that, like, oh, I
Sure.
called it a performance What's the difference, maybe?
I think it's still a performance, but when I'm saying performance intervention, I think I'm trying to explain that it is like when you're creating a performance intervention, you are consciously trying to intervene. You're trying to upset some kind of social setting, some kind of normative geography. So you want to actually get engaged with that. But if you call it, you can still call it a performance. But I think, I think when you call something performance intervention, it's deliberately trying to disturb some pre-existing social setting.
Great, thank you. That's super helpful. And Shireen says, can we read your dissertation somewhere? Well, I think that's becoming the book at Cambridge, right? More or less, with the revisions, I'm sure.
Yes.
So, yeah, that'll come out from Cambridge University Press in 2024. And follow-up question, or writing, other writing you have on this topic. So we put some links in the YouTube chat, Shireen, if you want to look at those. I don't know if there, that's, your website and the kind of, is there any other website with your writing that you recommend?
I try to keep everything on my website, so that's the best source.
Yeah.
And the bit that I was talking about Khoda Noor and the dance thing, so my paper on that just published today, The Revolutionary Mourner. So I'm going to put that also on the website. Yeah, I think the website is the best place. And if they couldn't get, if anyone would like to have a copy and they couldn't get it through the links, please just drop me an email. I'll be more than happy to send you a copy.
Great. Thank you, Saba. And Christiane Molina, also one of our PhDs, asks, can you speak more about your performance about singing in the mosque and the autonomy of the female voice in a space that resonates with the male voice that calls to action, like the call to prayer? Probably she's thinking in a mosque or something. So, can you speak about about singing in the mosque and the autonomy of the female voice in a space that typically resonates maybe with a male voice that calls to action?
I love that question. That's actually that mosque that I did all these performances in, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. Is designed for women. So, and I didn't know that when I was doing all these performances. I didn't know that. At some point, I realized that I've done so many so many kind of out of place performances there, and I was like, why is it? So I started studying the building as well. And I'm not suggesting that I was inspired by the fact that it was designed for women, but I found it quite interesting. It's a very interesting question, and it's a difficult one. I think I think I have a conflicted, and probably a lot of women, a lot of Iranian women, a conflicted relationship with our heritage legacy, because on one hand, I have all these places that are extremely familiar. There's this architecture, this spectacular architecture that I'm used to. I love it. I find a peace in it. I just love it. But at the same time, as if I understood the question correctly, it is a male-dominated space, and it has the history of this dominance. Even the voice, that's a very good point. That the male voice through azan or through other forms, it's just part of the urban space. It's like part of part of your everyday life. You walk around and you can constantly hear it. How is it possible that they're trying to like remove female voice? So I do have that conflicted relationship with these places, and for me, doing these kind of performances in these places is actually a way to redefine my relationship, recreate a new relationship with them, and kind of reclaim them for myself. Are they not part of my are they not part of my heritage? There must be. I must feel like that. One of the places, sorry if I'm taking too much time for this one, but I just love that question. One of the places that I really inspired me in thinking differently about my cultural heritage is Andalusia. So when I go there, there is this history of Islamic architecture. A lot of it is inspired by Iranian architecture. So there is that. But then I also feel like equal. I also feel like my rights. I can exercise my rights as an equal person. I'm not just a woman. I'm not constantly pushing the boundaries. I'm actually writing a whole book on my exile experience, and a whole chapter is about this architecture and what is my relationship. So hopefully by the end of writing that, I have some answer to this question. I can't hear.
Sorry, I was muted. The Zoom mute problem. So how is it difficult for you to go back especially since Women Life Freedom? I'm guessing it's maybe impossible to return, right?
Yeah. No, it's impossible. I mean, it's been impossible for a while. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, uh, it's been a painful process, but I've accepted. I think so many Iranians now find themselves in that position, so I'm not alone in, yeah, not being able to
Yeah.
go back.
And I thought your reference to, these modes of resistance that are carried in people's hard drives and on their phones, and there's a fascinating interrelationship there between the micro level of personal archival collection and performance and a broader context, both within Iran and then globally, that seems central. And I'm assuming it sounds like, right, you're in touch with people in Iran, but then that has to be handled in a really sensitive and delicate manner. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is part. It's a big part of this work that I've done.
yeah,
Um, the ethics of, because most important thing for me is the safety of anyone that I've collaborated with, and it's
absolutely.
very, very difficult. Um, on one hand, it's so rewarding because I feel so blessed that these people trust me and they give me their archives or they tell me
Yeah,
such intimate stories, such painful stories. But at the same time, it is such a responsibility to make sure that they're going to be safe and they're not going to be at least not be, as a consequence of my actions, they're not going to be in trouble. So
yeah.
it's been quite difficult handling that. Yeah.
Exactly, and thank you for that. I know because a number of our art practice PhDs are watching this, and we talk about what does it mean to do research, and your work is such a great example of how complicated research is, right, ethically and epistemologically, and so on. So this has been a wonderful, I think, lecture and discussion for them specifically. So let's see, Paula, do we have any other questions in the YouTube chat for me to pass along? I don't think I see anything here. I just want to make sure everybody had a chance to ask their questions. Looks like no? Okay, excellent. Well, Saba, thank you so much for joining us. I just thoroughly enjoyed this, learned so much, even more than I already knew about your amazing work. So, oh, wait, Paula says there's one more question. Okay. Bahar Abdi says, thank you for your fascinating lecture. I'm interested in learning about the challenges you faced when trying to connect with artists and activists, I think she probably means in Iran, as well as any obstacles you've encountered during your field research. How can we effectively address and overcome these challenges? Additionally, do you believe that relying on social media is a viable strategy for this purpose? Maybe the purpose is connecting with people in Iran. So I'm interested in learning about the challenges you face when trying to connect with artists and activists, as well as any obstacles you've encountered during your field research. How can we overcome these challenges?
Uh, Salam Bahar, countless obstacles. If you read the methodology chapter of my PhD, it's just about how things have changed and again changed and again changed. It's the nature of these kind of works, I think, and especially because for me it was such an anecdotal or a big part of it is my own life. During doing this research, it changed my life. And I had such a strange relationship with my research because I was fascinated by doing it, but it was at the same time changing my life. And I found myself, for example, in trouble for doing feminist interventions, for being outspoken, for so many things. And then as a consequence, I had to change my strategy of how to create knowledge, how to gather data. It is, I mean, I'm more than happy if if anyone wants, I'm more than happy to talk to them individually about these things because it's going to take some time if I want to explain everything. But I think the important thing for methodology is to be flexible and be ready. If you want to tap into something like that is so alive, you need to be flexible and yeah, you need to things gonna change. It's not like something that you can just have a very how can I say sterile environment and just keep everything in control. Nothing is in your control. Everything is moving, everything is changing. Like the woman life freedom was enormous. And to keep up with the pace of it, I got sick, and I'm sure a lot of people, like it was just so big. Um, it's difficult, but I think you need to be flexible, and you need to see how that is changing. You need to adopt to that. There's no other way, unfortunately. And in terms of social media, I think social media is incredible for. I love how it's created this direct link between people. So I've used that a lot for that. And also the other thing that I think has helped me a lot, social media has helped me a lot, is that because I've been outspoken about my own personal life, about what I've gone through over a decade, that has created this deep trust with people. So when I start talking to them, they're happy to open up because they feel like they know me. So I think in these two ways, I think social media can be really helpful. That you can give this image of yourself that people can trust you, and also at the same time you can communicate with them directly. But definitely with Iran, in Iran context, I definitely recommend not to keep communication on social media. So if you initiate something on the social media, take it somewhere safe like Telegram or Signal. But these are like details. So if anyone wants like guidebook guidelines on how to use social media or these other messenger platforms, I'm more than happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much, Saba. It's quite a journey from studying architecture to where you are now, huh? It's pretty
Yeah,
great.
but you know what? I think my fascination with architecture was stories of space and the
Yeah.
social production of space, and even placemaking. So that's that human aspect of space. And I
Yeah.
think I've stayed true to that. So yeah, in a sense, I haven't really diverted that much.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining us and for sharing your insights and your wisdom and just taking the time out of your busy day. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I know our audience did and our students did. So it was great to see you again. Look forward to talking in the near future. And on behalf of the Visual Arts Department, thank you again, Saba, for joining us.
Thank you so much. I truly enjoyed it too. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. And then I think we have to stay on just a little bit. Yeah.